Welcome to the Autonomic Healing Podcast. I'm Tom Pels.
And I'm Ruth Lawrenson. We'll be unpacking what it looks like to activate your brain to holistically manage stress and trauma that bring healing to the mind, body, and spirit.
Being free to live authentically as humans.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started. So we're continuing our conversation on rational intimacy, and we've kind of been moving along the different stages of rational intimacy.
Yep.
Right. So today we want to talk about this stage which involves devotion, and there's a lot of things that we're going to end up talking about around this fourth stage of rational intimacy, devotion. Maybe kick us off in terms of what is this stage, what does it involve? And what are the challenges maybe around being in this stage of rational intimacy where we get to live in a way where we're devoted to ourselves and others?
So to set the stage and the progression, rather than that tsunami of stress, which frankly most people and sometimes we will get into, which is we feel a sense of stress and need, and because we feel insecure and incapable, then we become distressed and discontented, and we feel powerless to do anything, and that upsets relationship with ourselves and with others. Then we become avoidant and isolating, and then it becomes resistance. I don't want to deal with defiance, I'm not going to, anger and not being assertive because it was a control issue, and now self-image and self-esteem and relationship with self is tanking. Rational intimacy, a sense of contentment, which isn't the absence of stress and need. The only time there is an absence of stress and need is dead. If you're alive, there's stress and need. But a sense of contentment, a sense of experiencing homeostasis, of I can have a sense of well-being and I am content, even if it's not great in life. And then out of that contentment, we can bring gifting and grace into relationship, interaction with ourselves, others, and that poise, which is what another word for grace is, and that gifting, which is grace, and we contribute that out of a sense of contentment. And the more we express that and manifest that grace, that poise and gifting, the more beneficial the response is to the stress and need. So even if it's going in the toilet for somebody else, it doesn't have to be for you. And that means that bringing the grace, the gifting, the poise into the interactions, into the situation, that we engage and we can connect, as we talked about in the last episode. We are involved and we are influential in a beneficial way, not impactful in a detrimental way. But we're influential in a beneficial way, which naturally sets the stage because we are influential, we have that sense of empowerment, and we have a sense of contentment even when there is stress and need, and not in spite of it, but because of it. This is where stress and need can actually be eustress. There's stress, and then someone came up with the concept of, well, wait a minute, there's always stress. So can there be good stress? Yeah. Eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S. Eustress is a beneficial, productive stress and need. When we exercise, we're creating eustress.
Yeah.
But it's a beneficial stress. It's a healthy stress. And that grows, and we feel more secure, more capable. We feel empowered with the gifting and the grace. And then we are influential and we connect, all of which builds toward devotion. And devotion is a love, loyalty, enthusiasm, faithfulness, commitment to a cause or a person. That's what devotion is. That's why I call it that. But the love, the enthusiasm, the commitment, the loyalty is toward a relationship with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And contrary to people thinking, well, that's self-love and that's a terrible thing, it's about people. And as I like to say, I'm a people. So just as I would have that devotion to others and to someone perhaps that I've partnered with, or who is a friend, or is someone I'm in business with, or whatever, and I have that toward that person, I can equally do that with another person. That person just happens to be me. I'm a people. And I like to think of it that way, that I'm a people, because it takes it out of that realm that can drift in an extreme into narcissism, and it's all about me, and it's not about anybody else. So we're back to healthy self-love.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to understand that, because it's not that we want to, it's not that that's the only place of love, clearly.
No.
But it's out, but I think what's key here, from what I've understood from our conversations, Tom, is that it's out of that place that you can actually love really well to others, to a cause, to a partner, all the various different relationships that we will encounter in our lives. And I think sometimes we get it so backwards. We try and love others before loving ourselves.
Yes.
And so it's really a starting point, really, isn't it? It's the starting point to be devoted to ourselves, to the cause of ourselves. And like you said, that can be in the choices we make, with how we look after ourselves. And then I do think that people are wary of it because of the narcissism,
of course,
and because of the, oh my gosh, are they just self-absorbed, the ego and all of that stuff. So
and frankly, because of the manipulation of the concept by society. Absent a healthy sense of loving people, and I'm a people, I don't have that to give and share with others. So I'm naturally going to want to get it from them in some non-assertive way. I'm going to want to get my sense of self and well-being and self-image and that by pleasing them.
Yeah.
And then it's a vicarious self-image. You think well of me, you love me, you approve of me, you accept me, so I can. But that's a vicarious experience. That's not my experience, that's your experience, and I'm vicariously living through that.
Yes.
The opposite version of that, on the other end of the spectrum, is I don't have a healthy sense of love or loyalty or enthusiasm for me at the core, so I'm going to manipulate you and get it from you.
Right. Yeah.
And then you're a possession. You're in service to me, and you exist so that I can feel good about me. Either end of the spectrum is what they have in common. At the core, in the center of that spectrum, is the absence of a healthy devotion to self.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that there's so much pushback societally is because of the absence of it to start with. And then it's like a groupthink that it can't be about an individual.
Yeah, and I remember that you've talked before about the seesaw, and what do you call it here?
Assertiveness, the teeter-totter.
The teeter-totter.
Yes.
Okay, and really, I see that as you're talking. I see,
Picture.
you know, on one end there's the narcissist, and on the other end there's the people pleaser, and you know, there's this kind of dance of kind of going up and down, and this. But the seesaw originally represents the assertiveness.
Yep.
So can we talk through those?
Yes.
Because I think what we're saying is that devotion to ourselves brings balance. It stops the one end of the seesaw or the other end of the seesaw, and it brings balance and kind of harmony to yourself, so that then you can live out of that space. But can we just talk about those, you know, the passivity and those different ones?
Devotion, love, loyalty, enthusiasm, faithfulness, commitment to a person or a cause. Who's going to argue against that?
Sounds great.
Woohoo! Yeah. Me? Myself? I can be that? I can have that toward me? Why not? It's toward a person. With the teeter-totter, the seesaw, self is on one side, others are on the other, and there is a lack of devotion to both. Because while it may look like I have a devotion to others and to their cause, and I take that on as my cause, but it's theirs.
Yes.
Because if I don't have that with myself, I don't have a cause. I am not my cause. I am not a person that I'm valuing. I'm not a person I am loving to. I'm not a person I am loyal to. It's all about this other person or this other cause, and I vicariously and so identify with it that I don't have me. I just have that. That's passive. With the teeter-totter, self is just left hanging, and all the weight lies with others, and they have control of the teeter-totter.
So it's classic people-pleasing.
Classic.
It's classic getting your self-esteem from others or situations or what other people
relationships,
think of you.
etc. Yes. The opposite version of that, and again, a lack of a healthy devotion. There isn't a love.
So it's the same core issue. It's the same core thing, which is the lack of devotion to yourself. But depending on what cause, I mean, personality types and story, I guess, you could be people pleasing. But the other end of the scale of that is...
It's all about me. And that's aggressive. And at an extreme, you exist to prop up my lack of ego strength and a healthy self-love. You exist to feed that. And it becomes manipulative. I use you. I manipulate you. And as long as you're all about team me, you're wonderful. You're great. We have relationship. And as soon as you don't, bye-bye. You're of no use to me. And the worst case is when you get a people pleaser with a narcissist, and that's death to them both.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
The other is a narcissist with a narcissist, and you've got a titanic battle royale, and who's going to come out with the crowd following them? That sounds strangely like current politics, but that's a whole nother question. That's just, or organizations.
Yeah. I mean, it's when, as you're describing it, I can apply it to multiple examples I've seen of those scenarios. And, you know, either way, whichever end of the spectrum you fall on. Well, before I talk about that, I just want to talk about narcissism, because it is a strong word, and I think
it's a huge buzzword.
It really is, and I think part of because it's become such a buzzword and because it's this huge word, I think it's quite easy for people to disassociate themselves from it.
Yes.
Because
to apply it to all sorts of people it doesn't even apply to.
That's true. So, like, how do we get some wisdom on that then with narcissism?
Narcissism is a fragile ego that is willing to use and manipulate other people to prop up and support or take the place of the person's individual work to be a healthy human being.
Yeah.
At an extreme, there is no stable ego. It's just not there.
Wow.
It's a spectrum, though. Self-interest. Well, I was talking about self-interest. But that's way over on the healthy intimacy where my well-being and my self-interest doesn't supplant yours. It doesn't take the place of yours. It isn't compromised or dependent on yours.
Yes. So that's the difference there. It's like...
That's totally the difference.
It's actually a fragile self-ego that's propping itself up via other people.
By
and is
using,
willing
manipulating,
to use them.
exploiting them. Yes.
So they're not interested in real relationship. It's what that person can give to them. And like you say, the sign of it is once you stop playing the game with that type of person, then you're out. And
yeah. And so the love, the loyalty, the enthusiasm is all highly conditional on you and your response to me. From the narcissist side, are you useful? This is transactional. You provide for me what I want, and to the degree that, and whenever you don't, you're out.
And so the difference, I think it's really helpful to say this, but the difference between devotion and that, because again, people can mix those two things. Oh, well, are you just being self-centered and blah, blah, blah. But the difference is that actually devotion, you don't have a fragile self-ego. You have a healthy self-ego. You have a
healthy self-image and a sober
self-esteem. Yeah. And so, and then so that's it's not anywhere near that aggressive trait.
No.
And I think again,
it's antithetical to being passive.
Yes. And so then on the passive side, you've got people who again, there's a self-ego issue. They're not devoted to themselves. But then, they're not aggressive with...
Oh, no. And wouldn't be.
No. But actually, they're still getting their esteem off other people.
Right. And then there's passive aggressive, which is a conflicted valuing. Passive starts off, I'm trying to prop up my value and worth by getting approval and admiration and acceptance from you. Oh no, you're not giving it to me. I'm going to become aggressive, and it's about me. Except I don't like me then, and I'm pushing you away, and we're having a terrible relationship, and then I'm never going to get your approval, admiration, acceptance. So now I'm going to dive back into people pleasing, and don't you love me? And there's a bond that is traumatic between the two. And so with passive aggressive, it's a conflicted valuing on relationship, and it's an alternating, vacillating value on a relationship. Sometimes others, sometimes self. And it's just this constant up and down on the seesaw. The teeter-totter is rocking, and it's nauseating. And then with extreme narcissism, this is where that other category of non-assertiveness that I invented is aggressive-passive. And it's all very clearly aggressive. And the narcissist is only valuing their relationship with themselves, using other people to exploit that, manipulate that, even with either their complicity in that, because they're getting something out of that, and you're their hero, and you're great until you're not, and then I'm tossing you aside, and I'm finding somebody else to put in that place. which is very narcissistic themselves. And it's transactional, and people use each other within that system. Or it becomes it looks passive, it looks pleasing, it looks praising, like, oh, you're so wonderful, aren't you great? And it looks like valuing relationship, when all it is exploiting and manipulating it for personal means and ends. And the person being manipulated and exploited may not see the hammer coming, and then they get hit with it, and they're going, but I thought you thought I was wonderful. I thought you thought I was great, and I was doing what you wanted me to do, and now I'm screwed, and you're walking away washing your hands of me? What? Yep.
And so we have all of these problematic relationships because really there's a core issue of not being devoted to ourselves, not having that
in a healthy, loving, loyal, enthusiastic way.
And then out of that, it's not just a devotion to ourselves, but out of that, there's a devotion, potentially a partnering with others. Can we talk about that a little bit? We had this conversation beforehand about, I brought up how just recently I was kind of thinking about the marriage ceremony that we classically go through, where, because we were talking about how some of the dysfunction comes from when we think we own another person, and what is that? And so I was talking to you about how strange it is in my mind now to think about how, a father gives away the daughter. I don't know if anyone would agree with me or disagree with me, but it seems strange because it indicates a sense of ownership of a person. And I was just curious the other day of like, where does that all come from, but anyway, that's just a tiny example of that thread. But I think in healthy partnership, it's not, no one owns the other person. We're not getting our stuff off the other person. Charge? We take our own responsibility, right?
Societies can be patriarchal. They can be matriarchal. But what happens in unhealthy human relationships is somebody's in charge, somebody determines the agenda, somebody calls the shots, whether overtly or covertly, and it's not partnership. It's just somebody's in charge. Because in the absence of people being assertive, nature abhors a vacuum, and people will seek power and influence and control. The absence of a healthy devotion and commitment that is truthful and loving to personal well-being means that I don't really and can't have a devotion to your well-being as well, because I don't understand and have a consistent devotion, enthusiasm, loyalty to a person. It happens to be me. And absent that, I don't have that to bring into partnership with you. And I can't be devoted and enthusiastic about your well-being because I'm not about mine.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
But if I have that with me, then I have that to bring into a partnership with you.
Yeah. And I think
that's devotion.
And it's a wonderful, like when we talk about it, Tom, I think, when I think of all, when we describe partnership, and it's not just in, there's all sorts of ways partnership can be at work. That can be in a close spousal relationship. It can be in friendship.
Parent and child.
Yeah, it can be in work.
Friendship.
All sorts of
co-workers.
stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it's very hopeful to me. When you describe it, I feel like, I honestly, I think my honest reaction is, God, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
And
because I see all the dysfunction, because I see
yes.
the mixtures between, the aggressive and the passive, and I see all of the dysfunction of that, and I've been part of those relationships too. And
of course.
And then, but there's this, but there's this knowing that there's an alternative, knowing that actually if there's devotion to myself, and actually there's this opportunity to, out of that space, then partner with another human, or with, friends, or whatever it ends up being. I think that feels so relieving to me that is possible,
Yes. Because then all those things that mitigate against it, like powerless, insecure, incapable, lacking control, those aren't relevant. They aren't determinative of personal well-being. Impactful? Absolutely. But somebody else's insecurity and incapability, somebody else's powerlessness, somebody else's control issues aren't determinative of my well-being. They're their issues. That is that person's issues. Does that mean I don't care about it? No, I can care about it, and it does matter to me, but it does it in a healthy, devotional way. And I can invite that person into partnership. And an extreme, that's loving your enemies. And wanting even your enemies' well-being when they don't even want it themselves, and they certainly don't want yours, but that doesn't determine my sense of well-being. I can have a sense of well-being. Are you well? Wonderful. Are you not well? Okay. But I get to be healthy, and I get to invite, share, and risk that being rejected. Okay, good to know. You don't want to partner with me. That's helpful to know. Or you want to partner with me, air quotes, and it really isn't. You just want to exploit and use me, or you just really want to be the one who determines my well-being? I don't think so. Nope. Don't want to do that. Because that's not in the interest of my well-being, and it's not in the interest of your well-being. And that's where that whole concept of enabling comes in.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that was, like, listeners, I dropped this word in earlier, and I was like, isn't that enabling? And then Tom was like, we haven't had the enabling conversation. So as we've already touched on it, let's talk about enabling, because I think it is one of those words that we can use and not really understand, so I think it's
and are encouraged to use.
Yeah, and so I think I said to you,
and there seems wisdom in it.
Did I say, I might be wrong here, but I think I said to you, is it that sometimes do the people pleasers enable the narcissists? And then you went, okay.
And I cringed. It's like, we're into another one of those controversial.
We've done this so long now. I can see, like, there's a little twitch in your eye that happens. And, like, so I was like, okay. So talk to me. Talk to us about enabling.
So this will be very controversial, and I understand, once again, I am not in the mainstream, but I don't believe in enabling. I don't actually even think it's beneficial to think in terms of enabling. I think that's just inherently detrimental, because of what it communicates, which is a lack of clarity about who's responsible for what. So to enable something, able, capable of, enable means to put into and share with that person an ability to do something that they did not have themselves. That's enable. Unless we're going to change the definition of enable, that's what it means to enable. To make someone or something possible where that person is not capable of it. So if you think of me in relationship with a crack addict, if I am facilitating and aiding and abetting by providing and facilitating them getting crack, I'm not enabling them, because I guarantee you that if I don't do that, they will find someone who will.
Yes.
Because they are able to do that. They are able to be addicted. I'm not responsible for that. Where enabling becomes very problematic is that somehow if I am enabling you, I share responsibility for your issue? Mm-hmm. I don't. That's your issue. You're the crack addict, not me.
And just to clarify, I'm not a crack addict.
No, Ruth is not a crack addict.
But
we all have our urges and issues. It doesn't happen to be that. My point is that to think of it in terms of enabling is to shift blame and responsibility from where it actually lies to where it does not. Now, am I responsible for aiding and abetting your self-destruction? Yes. But so I'm not making it possible for you to do that.
At the end of the day, there is a choice that person makes.
You're entirely capable of screwing up your own life. Mm-hmm. I'm not the one that makes that possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in the people pleasers narcissist situation, yes, a people pleaser can facilitate. They can aid and abet. They can encourage even the narcissistic trait in that person. But if that people pleaser person wasn't there, that narcissist will still be a narcissist, because unless they kind of do the work, unless they start on the journey towards devotion and healing and looking at their fragile ego, then they will continue being that type of person, being aggressive, and it doesn't matter whether that people pleasing person is there or not. Sure, it has impact, right? If we're aiding and abetting someone, but it's not. At the end of the day, it's dividing that responsibility, which is confusing then for people.
Absolutely, it's like the one who drives the getaway car for a bank robber. Are they enabling the bank robber to rob a bank? No, they're making it a lot easier for them to get away with it, potentially. But that person is robbing the bank. Now, are they aiding and abetting a crime? Yes. Are they making it possible for the bank robber to rob the bank? No. The bank robber would probably just find somebody else to drive the getaway car.
So with this understanding of that word and just the clarification, what does that allow us to grasp?
To be free, to be clear about who's responsible for what.
So in relationships, in whether, again, the spectrum of relationships, in relationships, often we might take more responsibility or less responsibility.
Yep.
Because we could be on the seesaw thing, but we could be on one end of the spectrum, where we're actually blaming the other person for the thing that actually I need to take responsibility for, because it's they made me do it, right? Which is kind of, we were talking my kids. It's like a classic kids response. I've got my two children. Absolutely. They're in a fight.
Not childlike, childish. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the classic thing is, why did you punch Titus in the face? They made me do it. It's that type of thing. So we know that. So it's either that we blame someone else, or we take on too much responsibility.
Yes.
And that can be bad too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the inverse. I am your worst enemy. Because I support your addiction. I support your self-destruction. Okay. I'm getting something out of that. Maybe because you suffer so badly, I have significance by rescuing you, and I've got to keep you not able to breathe and keep shoving you back in the water. there's no clarity about who is responsible for what. So then there isn't a truth that can be spoken about who is responsible for what. You own your truth, I own my truth, and there isn't a love that doesn't want to continue that. And there isn't a love that says, that matters to me, and I care about how I have been harming you. And how, oh, by the way, I've been harming myself.
Yeah.
No, there's no clarity, and so the boundaries are just a mess.
And then I guess when you don't have good boundaries, when you don't have that clarity and resolution about responsibility, it's very difficult to see healing happen from those spaces.
It precludes it. So devotion, love, enthusiasm, loyalty to a person or a cause, yeah. Now, will my love, enthusiasm, and loyalty that I have for myself, and I invite others into that to share that with them, will that be reciprocated? Maybe, maybe not. But it's not the point. It's not that determines my sense of devotion to my well-being, and by implication, my devotion to your well-being. If you join me in that and we share that, we're partners. To the degree and in the ways that you don't, that's compromised. But we don't have to compromise. Compromise is the answer and the solution that doesn't make it necessary to speak the truth in love.
Yeah.
And to seek genuinely your own well-being and partner with others in theirs. And to the degree that they do or don't, okay, they do or don't. But that doesn't determine the intimacy of relationship. That's devotion. Love, enthusiasm, loyalty, commitment to a person or a cause, and inherent to being a human being, which is community, which isn't isolated, is that.
Yeah.
I can't ignore your well-being. I don't want to ignore your well-being, but I'm not responsible for it.
Yeah.
You are. And I get to support that.
Yeah.
Or join you in compromising it.
Yeah. Wow. That's really helpful clarification there, I think.
Yeah.
And then let's just talk a little bit about, what comes out of that space. Because, if you can enter into this place of devotion, then let's talk, the word you use is envision, right? So can we talk about that?
Sets the stage for the next one, which will be the next podcast. The lack of devotion. And that absence of a healthy self-image and a sober self-esteem, supported by an influential interaction with people and situations, and having that influence and being empowered and feeling content and secure and capable means that I'm in a position now to not be thinking in a fantasy kind of way.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be nice? And it's just a fantasy. And this would be so nice. I would feel so good. This would be so lovely. But it's all a fantasy. Because there isn't the truth and there isn't love in it. And it's just a fantasy that will make us feel good. What devotion built on being interconnected and integrated and involved, and that grace and that sense of contentment, what that sets the stage for is now I can envision what does it look like to live out this devotion?
Yeah.
What are the possibilities here? What are the opportunities in this? And I can envision a different way forward because the alternative, and frankly, for most people, where they live is in the fantasy of wouldn't it just be nice and if only. But it's just a fantasy built on nothing but wishing to feel good.
And so this is why devotion is so important. And we will get to the envisioning. That's the next stage.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that in the next conversation we have. But I think, without devotion, without the balancing, without the, let's move from this kind of people pleasing or this like aggressive way of getting what we need from other people. Let's move from those spaces. Let's flip that script and make a choice to be devoted to ourselves, so that because the true envisioning comes out of that space.
Yes.
Or we end up living in fantasy land, which is so detrimental, I think, to everyone.
And the reason the envisioning naturally occurs and expresses itself is because where there is that devotion, and it is a shared devotion, then the sum is greater than the parts. And a chord is stronger with two than with one. Use whatever metaphor or truism that there is. Collectively, we are greater than we are individually. And this invites that in a healthy, relational, devoted way where we're both moving forward for mutual benefit and well-being.
Yeah.
The fantasy is just, I want to feel good, and I may involve you or use you or be used by you because it feels good. No, it doesn't have to be that. It can be the envisioning where a cord made up of multiple strands is so much stronger than just one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Such a great conversation, Tom. Thank you. And I'm looking forward now to the next conversation on envisioning, and we'll carry on from this point.
Yeah. Imagine the opportunities and possibilities. You've been listening to the Autonomic Healing Podcast.
Join us next time as we continue in our conversations with Tom. If you're interested in pursuing your own autonomic healing journey and want to find a practitioner, visit our website, innerworkings.org. See you at the next episode.